In this video, we'll talk about the difference between modern pigments and mineral pigments. I find this so important for not just acrylic painters, but oil painters and watercolorists as well, because pigment is pigment. Doesn't matter what type of paint you're using, we still have to deal with the fact that there's two categories of pigments. When those pigments are used in the paint acts very differently. So I wanted to take a moment and show you the difference between those two categories. First, I want to just talk about the terms. Modern and mineral are the terms that I use, whereas chemists use the terms organic and inorganic. It kind of gets confusing if you think about organic as natural and inorganic as non-natural. That's not the way it works. Chemists use the opposite phrases. So organic actually relates to synthetic pigments, whereas inorganic goes with the natural pigment found from natural resources like bark and beetles and dirt. So let's look at two examples. And there's a lot of information about modern and mineral pigments in both of the books that I included in this course. So I just want to breeze through this a little bit to talk about it because we'll be using these concepts for the rest of the videos in this course. So let's just look at these two paints. This one is called cadmium. All cadmiums are mineral colors. And this is called quinacridone. All quinacridones are modern colors. That makes it nice and neat and easy. All phthalos are also the modern category as well. Unfortunately, for some of us, on the tubes there is no indication of whether the color is a mineral or modern. So I just want to give you a couple of tips on how to tell. And then we'll talk about why we would use a mineral and why we would use a modern. So let's look at these two. Now, right off the bat on the tubes, we can see that this one has a little more coverage than this one does because it's applied over black lines. I'm going to do that in a bigger way here. This is the cadmium red, and this is the quinacridone magenta. So my handy cap opener. And when they're thick like this, it's called a mass tone, and we can look at their mass tone thickly, and there's really not much difference yet other than they're different colors, but they're still very thick and rich in color. It's when we spread them out in thinly, and I'm going to put some black lines here with a Sharpie marker so we can see what the coverage is like. It's when they're applied thinly that really makes the difference. Here is the modern color, and here is the mineral color, and you can see that the mineral color has good coverage whether it's thin or thick, whereas the moderns have a very different feel when they're thin. And to show you even more, I'm just going to take a brush here and I'm just going to scrub this. No matter whether this is thin or thick, it still looks like the same color. But over here, and I'll use a lousy brush here, you can see that because it has such a difference between its mass tone and undertone, it is always going to have a streaky feel. So when you use the modern colors, I recommend either adding some white to it. So here's some titanium white. And here's the big difference between mineral and modern, in addition to this mass tone undertone. When I add a little bit of white to this modern color, it brings out the true flavor, the brightness. It's like a nice bright color, and it's even, it's not streaky, and now it has good coverage. It's almost like adding a little white turns it into a mineral. When I add white to a mineral, this immediately goes chalky, and you lose your brightness. I don't know if you can tell here. So you're going to handle the paints differently, and the next video talks about washes or replicating watercolor effects, and this is where when we do that is where we really need to look at whether we're going to use the mineral or the modern. So one more thing I want to do is show you when I apply water. So when I make a wash with this, it's now going over white. It's going to get chalky just like adding white into the paint. But the moderns, and this is what I really wanted to emphasize, was when you add water to the moderns is where that bright color, almost like a light, goes on under the modern. So you get this nice rich color right away by adding water or adding white. Here you go chalky when you add water or white. So let's look at the most important thing about this is that when we use washes, and again, that's adding lots of water to the paint, look at the difference between these two boards. This is a pumice gel applied on cardboard, and I left the cardboard here in a margin so that you can see this gray pumice gel. Here I've used three, a red, yellow, and a blue, all mineral colors. Here I've used a red, yellow, and a blue, all modern colors, and trust me, I used the exact amount of water with each one. I didn't over dilute this one more than this. And you can see that you really lose your color when you use mineral with washes. So every time I try to replicate watercolor effects, I'm going to only use modern colors. And my favorite ones are listed in the first video, but these are my big three: the quinacridone magenta, the green gold, and the phthalo blue. And that's what I used to create this effect on a gray pumice. As a recommended practice to understand the difference between the mineral and the modern, I suggest taking a scrap piece of cardboard or painting surface, and I like to prop it up. And you want to take some modern colors and some mineral colors. You can put them on different sides if you want. So I'll put modern colors on one side and mineral colors on the other. And I'm just going to I'll just put a few colors out just so you can get the idea. Notice I'm using fluids and heavy body paints. Doesn't matter, the pigments are still the same in them. So here is my grouping of mineral colors, and here is my grouping of modern colors. And it's really fun to use a palette knife and a brush and try applying the mineral colors plain. Look at how nice and bright they are. And look at the modern colors. They come on real dark. But as soon as you have white, I recommend adding white to your palette. As soon as you have white mixed in with this modern color, you can start to see this whole variety that happens as the modern colors get the white mixed in with it, whereas this one starts to get chalky. So just play around with any of the paints, put them on and mix them up, mix them together, and see what happens when you add white to the modern versus white to the mineral.